Hi, I'm Brad Kahlefeldt, dual Olympian and Commonwealth Games gold medalist. You're listening to the Physical Performance Show.
And the winner is...
Failure is not an option.
I've had my ups and my downs.
I think it's an absolutely breakthrough experience.
Welcome to the Physical Performance Show, the show designed to inspire the pursuit of your physical best performance. I'm your host, Brad Beer. Listen in as we delve into how the world's top physical performers achieve their success, as well as the highs, the lows, and the journey of getting there. Let's get ready, set, let's go. Welcome to another episode of the Physical Performance Show, brought to you by the Gold Coast Marathon and Pogo Physio. I trust you've been having a great week, and I trust that you've been enjoying pursuing your own physical best. On today's episode, I share a conversation with you that I had with 2006 Commonwealth Games triathlon champion Brad Kahlefeldt. Brad shares around the highs, the lows, and the learnings from his incredible professional triathlon career, which spanned 20 years. By way of bio, Brad was a dual Olympic Games representative, competing for Australia in the 2008 Beijing Olympic Games and also the 2012 London Olympic Games. Following Brad's short course triathlon career, he then went over to the world of 70.3, Half Ironman Triathlon, and also some successful outings across the Ironman distance. But it was Brad's racing across the Olympic distance, 1.5k swim, 40k bike, 10k run, that really saw Brad in a world of his own. The statistics at the time of recording that I had, and Brad talks about these in today's episodes, were that of approximately 90 starts on the World Triathlon Series, or International Triathlon Union as it was formerly known, Brad podiumed a remarkable 42 times and won 16 times. Brad's had some incredible sprint finishes, which we referenced on today's conversation, and has had to overcome some serious injuries along the way, stress reactions, stress fractures, and even multiple bouts of pneumonia. You're going to really enjoy Brad letting us behind the scenes of the start of his career, the catch-up that he had to play with his swim in order to be competitive on the world scene. And we also touch on the first road marathon that Brad will embark on at the Gold Coast Marathon in 2018, where Brad will be looking to take out the Kahlefeldt Marathon PB for the family of 6 siblings and 2 marathon parents who between them have run 40 road marathons or thereabouts. So you're going to really enjoy Brad Kahlefeldt sharing 2006 Commonwealth Games triathlon champion, dual Olympic triathlon representative. Let's jump straight in. So Brad Kahlefeldt, or Stixie, as everyone affectionately knows you, we've been trying to sort this one out for a little while. Great to have you on the call. What's one thing that you're learning at the moment?
Well, one thing I'm learning at the moment, I think being on your feet all day and trying to train, when you don't have too many hours to do it. So time management, I think, is crucial. So I'm learning that at the moment. It's great. Everything's going well. And
life for you, Brad, post the end of your professional career per se, which was only a matter of, I believe, several months ago. It's busy, right? Your wife, Radka, herself, a professional triathlete and very successful one, an Olympian, is still racing and competing off after recently giving birth to your first child, little beautiful Ruby.
Yeah, that's right. Ruby was born early January. Radka was actually back racing, I think it was 11 weeks after Philippines 70.3, which... to our surprise, I just couldn't believe it. Yeah, she won by about 10 minutes. So it's kind of unheard of these days. But we actually got the advice from the doctors sort of in Wagga, and they sort of said, we can press ahead and do the race. But yeah, just the way she's feeling after the birth, she's going outstanding. So she's had a really good season so far with, a few wins. I think she's had a 270.3 wins, a couple of podiums, and obviously challenged Samarine just recently, recent European trip away. She was third there and then won Hungary Half Ironman. So, yeah, going outstanding.
Brad, it's a busy household and a talented one. Geez, Ruby's going to inherit some genes. We talk about the highs, the lows and the learnings of athletes' careers on this show. And, you've had a remarkable professional triathlon career. Rewinding the clock back, I recall as a junior sitting in the back of a car. I was part of the New South Wales Institute of Sport Development squad. You were part of that squad formerly. And I was in the back of the car with some coaching staff going to pick you up at Sydney Airport. And the conversation between the staff, this would have been 1995, 1996, thereabouts, was this guy from Wagga Wagga. Geez, he can run, and if we can turn him into a triathlete, he's going to be really good. So that ended up coming to fruition. Of your career, Brad, what would you say? I mean, you've had some incredible results, but what was the most special result to you?
Oh, look, it's all, I guess, stepping stones along the way. I mean, the first big one for me was probably the Under-23 World Championships in Cancun, 2002. That was a big win for me. I prepared well for that, and everything went right that day. I knew I had to swim front group, and I did, and rode well, and then got off and won by about a minute and a half in would have been sort of over 45 degrees in Cancun, Mexico. So that was one, and obviously Commonwealth Games in 2006 was obviously a big highlight for me. To do that in front of friends and family and sponsors down in Melbourne was quite special. And yeah, afterwards, I'm not sure, probably the World Championships, 3 World Championship podiums were a major highlight as well. So it's kind of hard to pick one over the other. But, if I was, obviously, the Commonwealth Games was amazing.
And, you mentioned the World Junior title, Brad. Was that for you a little bit of a validation that you're on the right track and that you do have what it takes at that stage of your career, as an under-23? Yeah,
it was, because, starting out as a junior triathlete in Wagga, there was no pool to train in. I had to get approval through the Army sort of barracks, and that took a number of months actually to get approval to swim in their pool. So they got an indoor 25 and they don't let obviously anyone turn up. So once I got that, and I had a time slot of I think 5 till 7 I could swim, and made the most of that, swim most mornings, and finally got the swim up to the level. But before that, I wasn't doing much swimming, to be honest. I was a terrible swimmer. I couldn't do hundreds on 2 minutes. I was basically a runner, and dive in the water and just sink like a crowbar. So I was terrible. So it took a number of years, and I was swimming, I would have been close to 80 kilometres every week in order to get my swim up to the level that was required in order to make it as a pro triathlete. And, it wasn't until around that 2001 period that it finally come to fruition. After all those years of doing those kilometres. So it's a nice feeling to get out in the front group finally after all the effort you put in. And I never really lost, the first or the second pack really kind of after that really. I was sort of always around. I wasn't at the front of the swims, certainly in the big races, but just trying to hang on the back of that front group or, lead the second pack trying to chase them down. So, yeah, it was a lot of work I put in, and glad I did.
That's absolutely amazing. Brad, how did you first even get introduced to triathlon? Growing up in Wagga Wagga, for overseas listeners, I mean, you might want to put a little bit of perspective around Wagga Wagga actually, Brad. Where is it and what's the population?
Well, it's paradise. It's halfway between Sydney and Melbourne inland, so it's quite a decent size. It's 60,000 population. I was born in Temora. It's even smaller than Wagga. It's about 7,000 or 8,000. We moved to Wagga when I was sort of 3 or 4, and one of 6 kids who grew up there and kind of got into running. Mum and Dad, both marathon runners. They've done about 40 marathons each, and pretty much everyone in my family now, all 5 siblings have done marathons and their partners and everyone else. So everyone's, obviously ran a lot, and so just growing up in that running family was ideal, and a lot of motivation, and especially trying to beat Mum from a young age. It was quite hard. She's got a 254 to her name, over 40 years old with 6 kids. So there's inspiration there to try and, I guess, replicate her sort of results and try and beat her. So grew up in Wagga and mostly ran, and then eventually wanted to go to the Olympic Games. Chose duathlon for the time being just because I couldn't swim to save myself, as I said, and went to a couple of junior World Triathlon Championships and come back from, there's the one in Guernica in Spain in 1998, and just realised that I wanted to go to the Olympic Games and Commonwealth Games and all the Triathlon World Cups, and I knew triathlon, I had to get my swim up to the level that was needed in order to get out and sort of be in contact, I think, out of the water and on the bike. And so I basically, went with, a coach, Brett Sutton, and moved to Jindabyne and trained with some of the best guys in the world there, and swimming hundreds every week, and mostly in shoes and board shorts and whatever the coach could find. It was hard training, but I actually loved it. So yeah, it was great. You
thrived on it. Who was the first triathlete, Brad, that you recall looking up to or aspiring to be like as a junior?
Oh, there were many. I followed the sport from a young age. Guys like Simon Lessing. I think he sort of won 4 or 5 world titles as I watched. Certainly in Lausanne, I remember watching Simon Lessing win that. That was very impressive. And there's a number of guys, obviously Welshie and Brad Bevan and all those guys on, watching the Formula One days. That was always exciting. So I just wanted to make it in the sport and go to the Olympic Games and try and make a living out of the sport for a number of years, and to retire after 20 years at it. I was quite content to hang the goggles up or the running shoes or bike, whatever you call it. But yeah, no, it's a relief, I guess, to get through 20 years, because lots of athletes don't make it that far in their sport for 20 years. And sort of glad I got through. An
amazing career. I mean, if my stats were accurate, Brad, of your ITU, International Triathlon Union, or World Triathlon Series as it's now termed, outings, 90 starts, 42 podiums, 16 wins. Were those figures correct, or were they out of date? They were even better than that.
No, I think my manager sort of said after, when I announced the retirement, that I think I had, it was sort of 25 to 30 podiums on the World Cup. And obviously three World Championship medals and 870.3 wins and things like that. But I mean, I haven't gone through every stat, but sort of what people tell you after you retire, that sort of, followed you and things like that, which is great. So.
Mate, absolutely incredible. Brad, we talk about the highs and the lows. What was the darkest day in your professional sporting career?
Oh, to be honest, there's been many. I've had pneumonia 3 times, and the first time, to be honest, the doctor said I was lucky to be alive. Like, the left lung shut down and I could barely breathe, but I was quite stubborn when I was young, and I just refused to go to the hospital, thinking it was the flu symptoms, and to the point where I couldn't actually walk. It was a stupid move looking back on it now, because I never would do that, but I just stayed in bed in the hope of coming good and, obviously go out training the next day. So that was all of a result from riding the rain on a cold day. So, that was one of them. I've had 3 or 4 stress fractures. I've had a hip operation the same year as Beijing Olympics. And obviously, with the pneumonia, I had it just before London Olympics as well. So I wouldn't say it was ideal timing, but, it's all it's a part of the job. You have your ups and your downs, and you just have to ride the wave as you go. So it's not all roses and things like that. It's quite tough sometimes. So you just got to muscle through it and try and get through those bad times, because those good times are certainly worth it.
You're listening to Brad Kahlefeldt, 2006 Commonwealth Games triathlon champion, share around the highs, the lows, and the learnings of his career to date. Support for today's show comes from the Gold Coast Marathon. Just like the Physical Performance Show, the Gold Coast Marathon encourages runners of all ages and abilities to push their boundaries and strive to complete a personal challenge. The Gold Coast Marathon is held annually on the first weekend in July, and it's a must-do event for any budding athlete, weekend warrior, or family looking for a challenge to complete together. Run for the good times at the Gold Coast Marathon. Visit goldcoastmarathon.com.au to register for any of the great events, ranging from the 2 kilometre dash to the full feature-length marathon distance. It's happening at the time of this episode being released in just a few days' time, and it is going to be an absolute cracker, the 40th edition of the Gold Coast Marathon. I recently caught up with race director for the Gold Coast Marathon, Cam Hart, and I asked Cam, how has the event been able to gain such international attention, including some of the world's great marathoners coming to compete on the Gold Coast? Here's what Cam had to say.
That's part of our goal that we sat down and looked at about 8 years ago to look at how do we get our event on the international stage. And we had an aspiration back then was to secure an IAAF gold label so we could be recognised by the top echelon of marathon events. But to do that, you need gold label athletes. So we went out and we started working towards that. We had a bronze label event, and then we skipped silver, went straight for gold. So on the back of that gold label, on the back of, I guess, a lot of anecdotal stories that international runners were taking back home, people were hearing very good things about our race. So as you say, last year we had Sarah Hall and Daisy Linden running our half marathon. As I said, we had all the Australian legends. We've had Lee Troop win our Australian Marathon Championships a few years back. Yuki Kawauchi has been running our event, I think, for 6 years and is returning this year with his mother and his two brothers. So we're going to have 4 Kawauchis here. So that's awesome. But the fact that we have runners of that ilk and of that international reputation coming and running our event and giving us such positive feedback is really reassuring for myself and the team here, because for us it's great where you have some of the world's best athletes who've been some of the world's great marathons come and tell us we're right up there as far as what they are, as far as our standard of delivery. So that's good feedback for us and something that the team here are really proud of.
Support for today's show also comes from Pogo Physio. We exist to help you get back to your physical best following injury. We want everyone who walks through the doors of Pogo Physio to cross their physio finish line. What's that? That's simply where we high-five you and tell you that you finished rehabilitation and celebrate you being back to your physical best. In addition to traditional session-to-session appointments, we offer some industry-first models of care, including fixed-fee services such as our very popular monthly wellness boosters and our award-winning 2, 6 and 12-week unlimited access finish line programs. If you're ready to get back to your physical best, save money and recover faster, then jump over to pogophysio.com.au to learn more about our services or to schedule your 1-hour initial appointment. Now let's jump back to Brad Kahlefeldt sharing around his highs, lows and learnings from his career. Brad, you mentioned, 3 to 4 stress fractures, through your career. From memory, there was, with some of those, what were they? Were they femoral neck ones or femoral shaft? I know you had the hip surgery, but where were those?
Yeah, 2 in the tibia and 1 in the femoral neck. So I had a lot of issues in the right leg. It's actually shorter than the left by about 2 centimetres. So I had a lot of problems earlier on. It's probably, I believe it was caused from the bike with the pelvis rotated to compensate for that a little bit. And I tried different things like different crank lengths, in the ride and things like that. And I thought it worked for a little bit, but then problems would resurface and it wouldn't be ideal. Obviously, getting injured before a major race when you sort of start to crank your training up. So you sort of learn those things along the way. And obviously, I've got orthotics to build that right side up, which helped a lot. And I've still I get orthotics, pretty much every year now. So I can just basically stay injury free. So it takes a fair bit of, effort in order to make myself, injury free. And I've seen lots of physios and masseurs and doctors around the world, and I was treated by some of the best. And very fortunate to stay injury-free for most of my career, but there were a number of times that, important times actually, that I did get those injuries, which I kind of regret. So, yeah.
Brad, when you mention regret, you mean you regretted getting the injuries in the first place?
Yeah, it's just, when you look back, it's sort of funny when you look back. It's just like, why did I do that track session? Or why did I run hard after a long flight when all my hips are locked up and things like that. And it's things you learn along the way. I was obviously young and had a lot of motivation in order to make it. So I sort of pushed myself a lot, which was good and bad, I guess. And sometimes you probably push yourself a little bit too much when you probably should be going a little bit slower or have a rest day. So I kind of learned along the way, and sort of the back end of my career, I didn't have as many injuries. But yeah, just when I was still growing and developing, I had a lot of problems in the lower legs and obviously the hips, and it took a number of years to get that right. And when it was right, it was ideal. It was great, get good results, good consistent results. But as I said, yeah, you just take the good with the bad.
Brad, you mentioned the back end of your career going better injury-wise than some of the early development years. You went over to 70.3 half Ironman distance, if you like, and also a few attempts, I believe, at the Ironman distance. You were very successful across the 70.3s. I think most of the time you took to a start line, you were either winning it or on the podium. How did you find the Ironman distance in comparison to the half Ironman distance?
Yeah, it's one of those stepping stones. I guess, from London 2012, I think at that point I sort of felt as though I had enough of that and wanted to step up into the longer distances, and all my sponsors supported that, and I made sure I spoke to everyone, and everyone was really happy I was stepping up to the long course. And obviously you can prolong your career for sort of another 5 or 10 years if you like. And it was never in the back of the mind really that I'd actually go to the full distance, because I thought it was crazy, to be honest. I used to watch Kona on TV and just think there's no way I could do that, or do a complete Ironman race for 8 hours. I thought it was crazy, but getting through the first few years of 70.3, and I kind of really enjoyed the racing. I was obviously moving around a lot, living in Boulder, a little bit in Europe and on the Sunshine Coast, and also around Lennox Head, and really enjoyed it. And then, it wasn't until 2015 I decided to do Ironman Melbourne, mainly, obviously all my sponsors down there and things like that. And it was a home race. Age Pacific Championship was a big one with a lot of points. So did that, finished third in 8:09 in my debut, and to be honest, I was really happy with that and how it all panned out, even though it hurt a lot in the last 15K but in the run. But I think that's quite normal for an Ironman. It's going to hurt at some stage and hurt a lot, so it did. But I did a few Ironmans. I was fourth in Age Pacific Champs in Cairns, and sixth recently in Challenge Roth.
Brad, in terms of your upcoming radar, you've got the Gold Coast Marathon that you're doing, which I believe will be your first road marathon debut. And as you said, you came out of a family with multiple siblings and running parents that have collectively run 40 road marathons between them. And I believe this will be your first. So you're slow to this party, right?
Yeah, that's right. I was considered a bit of a loser in the family. Haven't done a marathon, or an official one anyway, and I don't have the marathon record. I think in Melbourne, it wasn't a great time, but I ran a 2:49 off the bike, and I sort of said to my brother or brothers that got the Kahlefeldt record, because there's a record that's going around that Mum still has, the 2:54, and brother said, no, sorry, that actually doesn't count. It's not a full, like a complete marathon. Official marathon, I should say. It's something that it's in my blood. I absolutely love running. I love swim, bike, and run, but I never really had a chance to do a proper marathon. Obviously, when you're competing in triathlons and your sponsors actually pay you to race triathlon, and my focus was on that. So now, when I'm a little bit more time poor and working sort of quite a bit, most days for 8 hours. It's kind of all I have time for at the moment, and obviously the small swim and the small bike. But it's been great. I've really enjoyed the preparation. I've stayed pretty much injury-free, just a couple of small niggles. That's put me back a little bit, but absolutely loving it, and really looking forward to going back on the Gold Coast. I lived there for about 12 years, so I know those roads very well, and all the families going up, so really excited. And
are you brave enough to throw out your target time, Brad?
Everyone asks me that. I'm not sure. Yeah. I don't know. My PB off the bike's 1:10 for a half, but marathon, it's obviously Melbourne 2:49. But who knows? It'd be nice to sort of go, 15, 20 minutes quicker than that. But I don't really know. The training's been going quite well. I'm reasonably fit for the little time that I have. Really, really happy, and certainly hope I can get through this one well, and maybe focus on another race, I'd love to do Berlin Marathon as well. Absolutely always enjoyed racing in Germany. Love the crowds and the atmosphere. So I'd love to do Berlin, Tokyo, New York. There's a number of races I'd love to do. So, we'll kickstart the marathon running with Gold Coast. So.
Yeah, come on, that's awesome. And listening to you share that, Brad, it rings true with someone like Gwen Jorgensen, who we recently featured and has obviously transitioned out of professional triathlon to see what the best of her running capacity is, with the target to try and hopefully qualify for 2020 Tokyo. So that's a courageous move.
Oh, absolutely. It's going to be Gwen's new profession, I guess you could call it now. For me, it's not. For me, it's just it's more of a hobby. Something to keep me fit, so I just don't get too fat and lazy. And it's keeping me in shape, which is something I need. I need a goal. It's not just work related, which the focus probably the last 6 months has been work related, but certainly for the last little bit it's been running and work. It's just that fine balance, I think. Obviously family life as well, looking after Radka and Ruby best I can, and for the time being it's all going really well. So it is a hobby. I'm certainly not going to be up the pointy ends. So who knows on my time, but it's anyone's guess. But I've really enjoyed the build up and really look forward to having a weekend off and heading up to the Gold Coast where it's nice and warm.
We'll be cheering you on. Brad, you seem to have transitioned out of professional sport remarkably well. What do you put that down to? What's your secret there?
Have something lined up before you retire. I spoke to some good mates who did the same, and they just said, look, you need something ready to go for the day you retire, just so you don't go stir crazy, I think, and lose the plot. And that was always the biggest fear. As a pro athlete doing well, you're kind of always worried about what's next, and sort of how you live and how long it's going to take to transition properly into the real world and have a normal job and stuff like that. And it's a big worry for some people, and I was quite worried, but I was working on something for the last 3 years before I retired. I was quite patient but pushed quite hard with Radka, and it's something I can have my own business, and I can't mention what it is until later in the year, until I'm fully qualified for it, but it's exciting. I just want to provide for my family and have a good life, and so basically moving around New South Wales every 2 or 3 months in order for that to happen. And things are on track. We're currently living in Sydney and should be finished up at the end of this year. So it's always nice to have something lined up from pretty much day one. The day I retired, I pretty much stepped into this new job or training, you could call it, which has been very exciting.
You're listening to Brad Kahlefeldt, dual Australian Triathlon Olympic representative and 2006 Commonwealth Games triathlon champion. Share around the highs, the lows and the learnings of his triathlon career. If you missed last week's episode 115, featuring 2008 Olympic Games sprint kayak champion Ken Wallace, then be sure to jump back and tune into the full episode. Here's a little snippet of what you've missed.
You don't know what kind of training you've done. You know what training you've done, but am I in good form? Am I ready to go? And the week before Beijing, me and Adam had been doing a few training sessions together. It was amazing. Like, just you train together, and then you line up a week later and race at the Olympics. Yeah. And the times that we were doing in training, we were kind of looking at each other, and just go, "Wow!" Like this. The water's warm. We're in good nick. I know that. Like, wow, this is going to get gnarly.
To tune into the full episode, jump over, explore the archives right from within your favourite podcast player. Now let's jump back to Brad Kahlefeldt. Brad, are you ready for a performance round? Some rapid fire questions?
Yeah, sure. I'll give it a go.
Here we go. Training session you most disliked?
I would say the long rides by yourself, the 200k rides by yourself aren't too much fun. They can be fun with others, but sometimes no one will ride with you when you're riding that far. They think you're crazy. So I'd say the really long rides.
Yeah. Training session you most loved?
15.4s on the track I really loved, even though it hurt a lot.
What recovery would you have on those?
I'd do them on 2 minutes. Best average for me was 65.2 seconds, I think the coach worked out. So that was, I knew I was in reasonably good shape just a few weeks before Hamburg World Champs. So, really enjoyed that session. Obviously, 6 1Ks on the track or 8 1Ks on the track was one of my favourite as well.
And what would be your best average for those, Brad? And what's the rest on your 1Ks? The
best average for the 1Ks? The 1Ks were on 4:30, coming in on around, average was around 2:48, I think it was.
Very impressive. Brad, when you were racing, what was your favourite pre-race meal?
I'd say pizza.
Well, what sort of pizza?
Probably just Hawaiian. Depending on where I were, like if I was in Germany, it'd be hard to find a Hawaiian pizza because I think they think you're crazy if you put pineapple on a pizza. But yeah, pizza. Before an Ironman, I just stick to pasta, high carbohydrates.
Brad, currently bedtime, morning time. What's your routine look like there?
Depends on what day a week it is, but I try and get to bed around 10, and you're waking up around 5:30.
Athlete you most admire? Who's that and why?
I would say Roger Federer. Outside of triathlon, Roger Federer, just how he handles himself. I hear from other people who actually know him and friends with him that he's actually a really top bloke and he's great to hang around with. I just really like the way he carries himself, obviously on the court and off the court. That's a big one. So he's not arrogant. He doesn't talk it up. He just goes about his job and does it very well.
Toughest competitor that you ever raced? Who is that, Brad, and why?
I'd say Javier Gomez. I thought we're running flat out for most of the races. You get to 5K and he just steps up another gear and just takes off. And then you sort of just realise that you can't match him at all. You just try and push to get to the line, but he's just super talented and mentally very strong. So I'd say Javier for sure.
Is there a mantra, Brad, that you would use when you were racing? Some sort of self-talk that you consistently had going on?
No, not really. Just train as hard as I possibly could without going kind of over that line. As soon as you go over that line, it's either I would get injured or sick. So just pushing your limits best you can.
Well, your best recovery tip, Brad?
Massage or physio, I think. Just injury free, you have to get a lot of treatment. I was quite fortunate. Growing up in the AIS, I had a lot of treatment through the AIS physios, and also would have regular massage probably once or twice a week.
What one word would you use, Brad, to describe your racing style?
Yeah, it's a good one. I always raced with a lot of emotion. I was aggressive, and I'd just give it everything during the race. As soon as you cross the line, within a few minutes, you're sort of back to your normal self. But I was quite an aggressive racer.
How would you describe, Brad, being in the zone?
Being in the zone, being in the zone, I think it's crucial in order to get a good performance. So it's just unaware of really too much what's going on around you, I think, especially at some of the big races. I think you just that focus that you barely kind of know. You're not sort of worried about anyone else. You just want to get to the finish line in front, which is it's not always possible, but you just push as hard as you can. And I think in order to get to that, I think you have to experience that many times in training. When
was the last time, Brad, you were in the zone?
Quite a while ago, actually. Probably Roth back in July. I did a park run on the weekend. I was probably in the zone for about 10 minutes. But that's about it.
Brilliant. What did you push the park run out in, Brad? We're all curious to know.
Pretty slow these days. What was it? It's 15:35 at Picton Park Run.
Mate, that's by your standards, that's very impressive though. And Brad, final question in the performance round. What's the hardest session that you ever did in training?
Hardest session I ever did, I would say 100 hundreds in the pool with my running shoes and board shorts. I think, actually, and a band. There was no pool boy. There was just a band, running shoes, and board shorts. Well, they're actually running shorts what we ran in. So at altitude in Jindabyne.
And that was on what sort of cycle?
Oh, that was survival. So it was probably 5-second break. I can't remember. It would have been pretty slow, but it would have been. It's probably around 1:30, I think, with shoes, Kayanos.
Gosh, that's unbelievable. It makes Lionel Sanders' physical challenge of 3100s look very tame.
Yeah, I didn't have a choice. I probably could have taken the shoes off. It would have been a lot better, but I had to get stronger in the pool and I had to do the work. So I just did it, and I actually really enjoyed it because you got a lot of benefit out of that, and it certainly helped me swimming a lot.
I love that. That's amazing. Brad, if you could offer listeners who are out there pursuing their physical best one bit of advice from all your learnings across your career and now your hobby marathon running, what would Brad Kahlefeldt's one piece of advice to listeners be if you had to distill it right down?
I would say be determined, but be patient. You have to be patient. The results will come if you put the work in. You have to be patient, and that's the one thing I learned. I wasn't too patient when I was young, but I'm very patient now. You become probably a little bit smarter if you do make some mistakes. But, yeah, just have patience and believe you can do it if you put the work in. Powerful.
Brad, was there a time in your career on the patience where it stands out to you that you weren't patient and there was a negative consequence? You mentioned a few injuries there. Yeah, obviously the injuries, the illness. Maybe looking back, you probably don't do that right in the rain, or you rug up a little bit more, or you probably stay in bed when you had the flu. But probably injury and illness is the biggest one. Obviously race wise, I had lots of sprint finishes. Maybe one or two of them I went too early. People sat on me and then come around. But I don't have too many regrets. I just try and race the way it suits me, and the way that I've had results in the past is by going early, but sometimes you go a little bit too early and people obviously sit on you and out sprint you. So. And you had a few epic sprint finishes, Brad, and we'll tag some of these up, listeners, in the show notes, the YouTube clips, but there was one in particular, I think it was maybe Dmitry Garg, the Kazakhstan triathlete. Would that be right? There was a couple of them.
Yeah, that's right. There was Tijavarish in 2005 World Cup, and I thought I had that race won, and Dmitry took off up the home straight, probably 100 metres to go, and I sort of matched him just the last little bit. We both hit the steep ramp, and we both sort of dived for the line, and we both didn't know who won. And ITU brought us into the reception area of the hotel next to the finish line, and I think it was a tourist or a spectator had some footage from front on, and that's what they actually used. So I was a little bit disappointed I just lost that sprint finish. But yeah, there's been a lot of sprint finishes. There was Des Moines with Simon Whitfield winning. That was the big one. He won $200,000 US for that one. I was second, and Jan Frodeno was third. And
what was your pay packet, Brad, after Whitfield took the 200?
Dropped down 50,000 US, which you look at it, you miss out on 200, but I also gained 50,000. That's the way I looked at it. So I was very happy with that result, obviously in that field. So there was another one, Bevan Doherty in Tongyong. It was the first of the WTS, and that was an exciting finish. So.
Brad, I think of that. You were sandwiched between two Olympic champions in that in that race you referred to there, Jan Frodeno and Whitfield.
Yeah, that's right.
Pretty good company. Brad, final question here around personality of the guests we like to pull out, and it's a bit of a fun one. If you could have dinner with three people, living or past, who'd be at Brad Kahlefeldt's dinner table and why?
I'd have to go back to Roger Federer, just because, as I mentioned, the way he handles himself, and I really enjoy watching him compete. That's a tough one. I would say Kipchoge. I kind of been studying the way the Kenyans train and really enjoy, the breaking too and things like that. So Kipchoge, I have to bring my wife as well, because I'd probably just, obviously spend 2 days telling her what happened at the dinner table. So there's your three.
Oh, that's brilliant, Brad. And finally, all guests of the Physical Performance Show get to issue listeners with a physical challenge for the week. So what's Brad Kahlefeldt, 2-time Olympian, 2006 Commonwealth Games triathlon champions, physical challenge of the week going to be?
I would say something that worked for me during my career is finish off your aerobic runs, go to a grass oval and do some surges to race pace, and I think that's very effective. So finish off your aerobic run, might be 40 minutes, might be an hour, but the last 10 minutes, just go to the oval on soft, even grass and do something like 30 seconds with 30 seconds off, just to keep you in touch with the leg speed, and it won't knock you around too much being on the soft surface.
That's terrific. That's very practical. So, Brad, thank you for sharing that. And thanks, Brad, also for sharing your time today very generously. I know you've got a lot going on at your end, and we'll be all cheering for you come your road marathon debut. At the time of this going live, it'll be just a few days in between. And Brad, if we do want to follow your journey, where can we follow you on social or any other outlets?
Yeah, so Instagram, Stixie1, I think it is. And I've got a website, bkrcoaching.com, so I'm coaching as well, the athletes all around the world. So that's one spot, and also Twitter @Stixie. So. And
before I let you go, Brad, Stixie, who first gave you that nickname? And, you could draw an assumption because you were always very lean. But why?
I think it was back when I was talking about the Duathlon World Championships in Spain in 1998. I think one of the guys looked at my legs and started calling me Sticks, and then eventually I become Stixie. So not the biggest set of legs, and they're probably getting even skinnier doing just running and a little bit of cycling, but yeah, it's just the leg size, I think. So you have to sort of get to the gym and bulk them up a little bit, I think.
Well, Brad, no surprise, but, a small ankle circumference is correlated with fast running.
Is it?
So, yeah, absolutely. So it never surprised me how fast you ran, knowing that.
Who knows?
Brad, all the best. Thanks for your time.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Brad. Appreciate it.
So there you have it, another episode of the Physical Performance Show. I trust you've enjoyed today's episode and Brad Kahlefeldt's sharings. If you're on the Gold Coast Marathon course this weekend, keep an eye out for Brad. He'll be flying along, running a very fast time, I'm sure. If you enjoyed today's episode, then please let both Brad and myself know. You can find Brad over on Instagram @Stixie1 and myself @Brad_beer. If today was your first time tuning in to the Physical Performance Show, then a massive thanks. If it was indeed your 116th time, then thank you for your ongoing support. Thank you for hitting subscribe to get this show into your earbuds each and every week as it's released on a Thursday evening. And thank you for those that have been taking the time to leave a review or a rating over on iTunes. A big thank you this week to regular show listener, Matt Gandy. Matt rated the show 5 stars. What a great podcast every week. Matt commented over on iTunes, love the format and the podcast. Different to most with the performance round and various other questions that are thrown around. Loved hearing the Siri Lindley interview, and the Bernard Legat interview was just something special. Let's try to get Cadel Evans and even Stewie O'Grady on. Would love to get into the minds of some of the best athletes in some other disciplines. Matt Gandy, they are fantastic guest recommendations. If anyone has any links to be able to definitely try and hook up Stuart O'Grady or Cadel Evans, then please let me know. And certainly if the gentlemen are listening, then we'd love to feature your stories. Matt, thanks for your support and thanks for taking the time to leave the review. Big thanks also to those taking podsies and sharing them on social media. That's simply a screenshot of the episode you're listening to, or simply tagging in with a photo of your choice the episode that you are listening to and enjoying. This week, a big thanks to @Haley J Stevo, all one word, lowercase. And Haley tagged in the episode featuring Lionel Sanders, Ironman Triathlon champion, podcast episode number 2, as she went for a beautiful, long, easy run along New Farm in Brisbane. Thank you for your podsie, Haley. All right, we have been running the Physical Performance Show podcast quiz for the last 10 episodes, and we have a winner. The winner receives a $100 movie voucher to the cinemas of your choice. And drum roll. The winner is Mitchell Weir. So Mitch, thank you very much for taking the time to leave your feedback around how the show can get better and the bits that you already enjoy. So Mitchell, we will be in contact to get you your prize, and thank you for taking the time to enter the Physical Performance Show podcast quiz, and a massive thanks to the many others who also contributed some invaluable feedback. We've taken it on board, including some more comprehensive show notes with different tags, recommended reading around the featured guests, including the expert editions and also the featured athletes, starting to do some episodes around everyday heroes, and different facets for expert editions that you'd like to hear us cover. So thank you very much. All feedback was received, and a large bulk of it will be acted on. We'd love to change everything quickly. However, we will slowly move towards taking up some of the feedback that's been offered up. So thank you for helping make this show even better. Finally, if you are into running, then be sure to check out the second revised and expanded edition of You Can Run Pain Free. This revised edition is about 50 pages longer. It contains lots of new content. At the moment, it can only be picked up via Pogo Physio Online, the Australian hard copy edition. It'll soon be released across all platforms, digitally, Amazon, internationally as well. If you're a regular listener of the Physical Performance Show and you'd like to pick up a signed copy, there is a promo code that will save you 25% off the recommended retail price of $29.95, and that is RunPainFree25. So jump over to pogophysio.com.au, click the book tab, and from there, enter in the promo code to receive your 25% off. The book's designed to do what it says on the cover, to help you enjoy injury-free and faster running, and to ultimately explore your true running potential. All right, coming up in next week's episode of the Physical Performance Show, we're keeping the triathlon theme going for one more week. I'll bring you a conversation that I had recently with Norwegian triathlon powerhouse Kristen Bloomenfeld. Kristen was the Super League triathlon champion from Jersey last year, is a Norwegian Olympic representative, and he's got some great insights into how someone in Norway conducts a professional triathlon career. He's got many great training strategies and some great stories to tell along the way. Following Kristen, we throw over to some expert editions, some very well-known runners, and a host of other physical performers to come. So thank you for your ongoing support. Until next week, keep pursuing your physical best performance. I'm Brad Beer, and this has been the Physical Performance Show.